5, which is all about self-love and why it's not selfish and why it isn't a couple of other things as well. I think we get confused, or we have been confused by others as to what self-love actually is, and therefore it needs a little bit of clarifying. And I think maybe the weekend of Dinnet is appropriate. I didn't plan it that way. I never even registered for Valentine's Day this year for whatever reason. Just didn't register this year, as somebody else mentioned it to me. So it wasn't intentional, but the weekend that's in it, let's go for it. So we're talking about needing to do a little bit of a rewire here. Self-love can be seen as very negative. That the very act of looking after ourselves first can have some very negative connotations for some of us. And in that case, then it needs a genuine rewire in your brain. The first thing I would say to you is, yes, it's not selfish. People can equate it with being narcissistic. Definitely not narcissistic. Self-obsessed, no, you're not self-obsessed if you're self-love, self-care is not self-obsessed. Self-love requires us to be very honest with ourselves and about ourselves. And that's very hard to do, get honest about yourself with yourself. You've got to face your inner critic and your inner demons in order to do that. You've got to forgive yourself. You've got to do a bit of acceptance there. And then, you've got to accept yourself, warts and all. So that's definitely not self-obsessed. That's definitely not somebody who's narcissistic. They would never, ever even dream that they would have any warts at all. They see themselves as perfect. Number 2, it can be seen as entitled or entitlement. It's not that either. Definitely not. People who are entitled can be very overbearing. I'm sure you've met them. They feel that they're entitled to whatever it is they want. They don't have to do any of the hard work to get it. They can seem very self-confident as a result. I'm sure we've all met people like that. Maybe we've worked with people like that. But that isn't what self-love is about. That isn't what they're about really. If you dig a bit deeper with these people, they often have very low self-esteem. They often have very many issues and problems, and they're coming from a base of fear. They're actually operating from a base of fear. They're not facing up to reality. And just like a narcissist, they're not facing up to reality at all. And self-love is definitely not that. It just, there's no place there at all in self-love for that to operate. It's more in line with being self-compassionate, with self-acceptance, with self-care, basic self-care, looking after yourself. And people who've had to do this kind of work, who've got in, done the hard work to put themselves first, to love themselves first, they tend to be more caring, more compassionate, more accepting of themselves, but then it ripples out, and they do that with other people. So you can see then that an entitled person wouldn't do that. Sorry. Sorry. Number 3, it can be seen as an excuse. An excuse to avoid responsibilities, to escape accountability, things like that, or to exploit and manipulate. Typical, exploitation and manipulation. You're very much negative vampires. So again, we would go back to the narcissist. You could see why it could be equated with that, but it's not. People who practice self-love don't do that. They don't do exploitation. They do not do manipulation. They do not do, avoidance of any sort of responsibility. They are accountable for their actions. They take account. They do hold boundaries. They hold healthy boundaries. They hold healthy boundaries with themselves and others. And therefore, people who don't do that can label them. Can label them as being selfish, can label them as being entitled, because they're holding a healthy boundary. And people who don't have those healthy boundaries, will label other people as a result. And this is where it's coming from, what self-love is not is coming from. And people who self and love themselves know that it's okay to hold these boundaries and to ask for help. They know they can do that. They know they can do that. So, I go into much more detail in the blog, which is at www.deborahbyrnepsychologyservices.com, on what self-love is not. I also go into an awful lot of detail on ways that you can start to create self-love, and they're only small steps that you can start to take, because it does take time. You might need to reach out and talk to somebody like me if you're finding this particularly difficult. But self-love can be created in a variety of ways with self-habit. Small self-habits that we can put into our lives that are looking after ourselves. So the very basics would be self-care, our basic self-care, meeting our basic daily needs that I've talked about before, setting boundaries, having compassion for yourself, self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, and putting in place positive support systems, positive people in your life. I'm not going to go into detail on these this morning for the simple reason they all have, every one of these topics have a variety of videos I've already done. You can find the links in the blog, which I'm going to leave in the description below. You can also read the original blog, which went out this week, or you can come into my group, a free group, and you can do a full course on all of these topics, and get yourself started and have a conversation with me, even in private. Have a free conversation with me. How can I do this? How can I start loving myself more? How can I start putting myself more first and set some healthy boundaries with people? It doesn't mean that you're not there for other people in your life. In fact, you're there in an even better way, in an even healthier way, when you do this kind of work for yourself. So I'm going to leave it there. It's a short video this morning. As I said, all the topics are in the blog in a bit more detail. They're also available as free videos already. I've already covered every topic by video, and then I have the free courses that go into much more detail over in the group. If you want to join the group, I'll leave a link in the description below. And I would say, take care, stay safe out there, enjoy your weekend if you're off, if you're not on the front line, I will talk to you all again next Saturday morning, and I'll see you then. Thank you.